Hi, for this little mini lesson, I need you to have a couple things. The first thing you're going to need is your vocab chart. It says C8-26.01 at the top, so you can either have this online or you could have it on paper. I would choose paper, it's easier for me. And you're going to need a copy of the essay that you turned in last week, and stapled to it is a rubric that looks like this. So you're going to need both things. So please pause right now and get both things. If you don't have them, you need your vocab chart and your essay with the rubric stapled to the front. Now that you have both those things, we just want to talk about some vocabulary terms that are helpful for your writing. You're going to add this information to your vocab chart. So this is on the side that says academic vocabulary, because these are just like SOL type terms that you have to know how to master, but it's hard to master if you don't know what they mean. Before we do that, I just want you to think about what makes good writing. If you were to ask somebody, is this good or not good writing, what kind of things would you expect someone to say for good writing? A lot of times I hear like, oh, capital letters and punctuation, and that's part of it. That's cool. But what makes something really good? And sometimes what makes it good, it's hard to pinpoint. You just know it when you see it. So the things on your vocab chart are kind of what the state of Virginia says make good writing. It's not always spelling and punctuation. It's not always how long it is. But there's certain factors that would make good writing. So some of these things are just to help you know how to play the game. Last week we talked about how to get a certain score on the SOL writing test. A 9 is considered a passing score, 9 out of 12. So when you're looking at samples, what would get a 9, what would not get a 9, it really just depends on a lot of factors. So these are the words you're going to be trying to define: composition, elaboration, written expression, mechanics, and we're just going to talk about the rubric one more time, because the big deal is I want you to, after you get all this vocab, I want you to come back and actually self-assess your essay, score yourself on the rubric, and then I'll score it too. So just like you did some of you samples last week online, this is yours for real, and I want you to try to score it yourself. So right now, I'm going to pause and find my vocab chart, and we're going to transfer to that. Okay, so as you can see, this is the vocab chart that we're working with this week. There are other lessons that you can get your main idea and notes from, so when you do that, add it to this. We're going to look at the word elaboration. A lot of times, and maybe I've even said it to you, elaboration, teachers say, you need to elaborate more, and you're like, okay, what's that mean? So elaboration means to say more about what you just said. And when I say, I'm saying write. This is my very non-fancy definition. It means to just say more about what you just said. So if I say, man, I love Christmas, elaborating that would be examples of things I actually love about Christmas, or a story. Not I love Christmas, and I love New Year's, and I love Halloween. Like, that's just listing. Elaboration means to say more about what you just said. So my sentence for that, because I want you to use this in a sentence, is something like, elaboration tells the reader more information or details. You don't have to copy that sentence, but that's a pretty good idea. It shows me that I understand the word elaboration. An example of elaboration could be a story about why you like something. It could be examples. It could be jokes. It could be anything that's an actual more about what I just said. When I try to think of elaboration, I kind of think in terms of writing. So here's just like one statement. This is not elaboration. Here's a statement, and then details, and then another statement, and then details. This is elaboration. In my mind, that's how it looks. If you draw your own picture, that'd be cool. Part of elaboration is something called composition. So when we're talking about our SOL rubric, composition is your organization, your structure, and your, I'm going to say, bulk of your essay. Your organization, your structure, and your bulk. This is your like fat paragraphs that elaborate. This right here is part of composition category. This is just your overall, are you saying enough to create the purpose that the writing is supposed to do? For composition, I want you to put composition means writing enough to address the prompt. So this is your thesis statement. It's everything that shows you know what you're talking about. When I think about composition, I think about a flea map. I think about, does this person have like lots of details and elaboration? Your flea map is kind of a really good way to do composition. So this whole thing is your composition. Do you have all the elements that you're supposed to have in a piece of writing? An example of composition is your flea map. It's written paragraphs, not a list, but it's your actual structure. For written expression, and these are scored together, they count twice. These two right here are scored together and count twice. Your written expression is your word choice. Vocabulary, is it high or low level vocabulary? And honestly, your voice. And variety. Are you starting every single sentence the same way? Are you switching it up? Are you varying how you speak? Are you using precise vocabulary? That place with that thing, that time we did that thing is not precise, so this is going to be very precise. So my sentence is, written expression shows a writer's personality. If you read something and it's boring, that's because written expression is low. It may say enough, the composition could be high, but the written expression is really low, then it gets really boring. These two go together, though, as one score. When I think about written expression, if I were to draw a picture, I kind of think word bubbles like, and then I think word bubbles like, ooh, 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 yay. Like, that's what I think. Is it exciting or is it boring? Written expression is supposed to make it seem like a real person is talking. So, an example of written expression maybe would be the tall man skipped down the sidewalk versus he went there. This one, maybe. This one, no. Come up with your own example if you like, but you need an example of written expression. Okay, the last one is mechanics. You have two categories for your SOL score. These two count twice, and then it's added to mechanics. And mechanics doesn't mean like somebody who works on cars, but if you think about it, it's kind of the same thing. If I take my car to a mechanic, they fix all the things wrong with it. They don't repaint it. They don't make it bigger. So mechanics in writing means grammar, capitalization, punctuation, sentence structure. It's all the picky little stuff that gets fixed, that should be fixed. Mechanics is, and it's plural because it's like many things that get fixed, so mechanics is 1/3 of your essay score. And that's true. So if it all totals to 12, these two together count twice, plus this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, it counts out of 12. When I think mechanics, I might see something like this and change it to something like this. It's not a text message. So an example of mechanics would be editing. An example would be something like this. So these are your categories for the writing SOL. The rubric that you have talks about these 3 different categories but puts them into 2. It's 2 domains. So this right here we're going to call A, and this right here is called B domain. And if you practiced this last week, this will be a little more familiar. So you don't have this paper necessarily, but you have a smaller one. These categories right here are all things in domain A. From right here on, this is all your composition. This is all your written expression. And you don't have this paper, but just kind of follow along with me. This is your composition, this is your written expression. Overall, you would get a score 1, 2, 3, or 4. Overall, 1, 2, 3, or 4. 1 is like pretty dang terrible. 2 is about 50% mistake. 3 is about 75% accurate. And 4 is probably 90 to 95% accurate. This is especially important when you're talking about word choice. Everything could be perfectly laid out. If it's super boring, then that goes down here. So you would get a score somewhere 1 through 4, and you do it twice. It counts twice. Down at the bottom are mechanics. So this is B. Sentence formation, usage of words that's correct, then or than, things like that. Standard inflections means question marks if it's a question, not putting exclamation points everywhere, just standard usage. Subject-verb agreement, capitalization, spelling, punctuation, formatting is indented paragraphs appropriately. And so all of this goes on the mechanics category, and it gets a score 1 through 4. So ultimately, the top and the bottom get added together. So whatever's here, let's say it's a 3. 3 plus 3 would be 6. Plus whatever's here, maybe 2. Then you'd say something out of 12. If it's 3 up here, and 2 on the bottom, it'd be an 8. 9 is passing. If it's 2 here and 2 here, it'd be a 6. Because this one counts twice. So what you're going to do is just try to kind of self-score your own essay, and this first time may seem a little strange because it's yours, but I just want you to think about how do you feel like you did in comparison to what the state of Virginia is requiring. If you're now realizing like, man, I really needed a little more of this to make this higher, then that's something we work on. That's okay. But with the essay that's attached to this rubric, I want you to score it, and you score what's on that essay. So if you didn't finish, you score what's there. Ask questions if you have questions, but your total should be out of 12. There's no score lower than a 3, assuming you wrote in English, and there's no score higher than a 12. If you got a 1 here, horrible maybe. If this was a 1, it's a 1 plus 1 plus 1, that would be a 3 out of 12. So, take a minute, you're going to keep your vocab chart. I don't need that. You need that. You're going to keep your vocab chart, and tomorrow and the next day we'll add to it. Later you can add main idea to your stuff. And then you're going to turn in your essay that you self-score. Okay?